briefly, and then I will invite you to formally introduce Hemant, and then
Okay.
we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, it's live now.
Vaibhav, I'm sending you the doc link for question and answers.
Sure, thanks. Okay, I see it's 8:30 p.m. IST sharp. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on your respective time zones. I think as I repeat in all the talks, very briefly, so we started with TEG in 2023 when I started leading the startup and entrepreneurship special interest group. Of course, before that, Praveen Mallaji was taking care of it, and then I started. And the idea was to have an initiative which can connect fellow alumni. That was one reason, but also kind of be a platform where budding entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, or those who are in need can get some kind of help, can connect with each other. And we started with that initiative, and then we were able to bring in a lot of our alumni as speakers. Of course, one of them is today with us. And also we have a co-host, Rajan, again, our own alumni with us here. It's a pleasure to have them here. And so we started, and then now at the moment we have 1,000 plus people in our active WhatsApp community that we have, and around 3,000 interested people for the TEG community. And when I see that people are actually able to get some help from the TEG group or are connected, in fact, there is an informal TEG group as well, which is a lot more active than the formal group, where people on a daily basis try to communicate and try to discuss issues. I feel really, really happy to see that okay, from 2 years, since 2 years that we have been in this journey, we have covered a lot, and I think a lot of people have benefited from it. And every now and then I keep getting messages, emails from fellow alumni thanking about starting this or having this kind of platform basically to connect. And that's the plan, and that's how we are kind of going forward. We are also trying to come up with a kind of a list of mentors whom you can reach out to, of course, as and when you are needed, or engage with them in your startups or whatever ventures you are building. And I think that will be updated in a couple of weeks. So with that, I will ask Rajan to formally introduce Dr. Kanakia.
Okay, as Vaibhav said, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. And for the fathers in the audience, happy Father's Day. It is my distinct honor and genuine pleasure to introduce a man who has been defying odds, expectations, and even basic physics since our IIT Bombay days, Dr. Hemant Kanakia. Now, you have all read his official bio, and yes, it paints a picture of an accomplished academic, serial entrepreneur, investor, and innovator. But let's be clear, Hemant is much more than what's written in a formal biography. See, we, the IIT Bombay class of 1975, are unofficially and honestly quite officially, based on what we heard from our director and the dean, ACR, during our recent Golden Jubilee reunion, are regarded as the greatest batch ever to graduate from the institute. Even the legendary Nandan Nilekani, IIT Bombay's most illustrious alumnus, himself considers us the GOAT batch, greatest of all time. No exaggeration there. Truth be told, even Nandan paid to be induced inducted as an honorary member of our batch. I'll tell you the whole story some other time. Suffice it to say that our batch has collectively achieved an incredible number of firsts for IIT Bombay. And Hemant, well, he's been a leader in proving exactly why our batch is unmatched. Hemant has always had an unstoppable drive, especially when challenged. Reminds me back in our hostel days, one of Hemant's wingmates casually remarked, "You can't jump from the first floor without getting injured." Now, most people would laugh that off, wouldn't they? But not Hemant. He took it up as a personal challenge and an affront to his abilities. Not only did he make the leap, but he landed so smoothly, I suspect Sir Isaac Newton himself would have raised an eyebrow. Now, beyond defying gravity, Hemant was also a volleyball terror. And not just because he was good at the game. He had a stare that could psychologically dismantle the opposing team before the match even started. He's smiling, I can see. His signature move, use his height to spike the ball at just the right moment, winning decisive points, the kind of precision that was awesome to behold and should literally have been trademarked. Frankly, some of his opponents might still be reeling from at those times. Now, when it comes to entrepreneurship, Hemant didn't just build companies, he built exits, significant exits. While the rest of us were busy pivoting our business plans and figuring which side was up in our attempts at entrepreneurship, Hemant was creating multi-million-dollar enterprises in record time. I think his first attempt at this was a little bit over 3 years from concept to exit. Hemant may have been a late entrant, and his entrepreneurial journey may have been rather short, but it was nothing short of spectacular. Just when we thought he had done it all, he surprised us yet again. His latest venture, the non-profit Maker Bhavan Foundation, is yet another proof of his relentless drive and focus. A bunch of our GOAT batchmates conceived this experiential learning initiative called Tinkerers Labs when we met at London's estate in Connor, a little more than a decade back. But of course, Hemant took charge. Now, thanks to his leadership, we have nearly 20 of them across the country, and we are adding to those numbers. Once again, he's transformed a vision into reality with the same precision and tenacity that he displayed on the volleyball court all those years back. So whether he's defying gravity, dominating volleyball matches, building multi-million-dollar ventures, or turning ideas into movements, one thing is clear. Hemant embodies the GOAT mindset in every way possible. Please join me in welcoming the unstoppable, passionate, and incredibly inspiring Dr. Hemant Kanakia.
Thank you all. Thank you, Vaibhav and Rajan for inviting me to give a talk. I'm truly humbled and at the same time truly troubled by the introduction I got from Rajan. Uh, I would rather define myself much more simply, and I would say I'm IIT Bombay, batch of 75, hostel 8, electrical engineering. One of those oldies when the IIT was 4-year courses, and there was no computer science. So although I worked on computer science, my major was still electrical engineering. Briefly about myself, I from there joined the TCS, worked there for 1.5 years, figured out that outsourcing is not my cup of tea. I went off to do higher studies, first master's at Case Western, then Ph.D. in electrical engineering at Stanford University. From there, I jumped to Bell Labs, back to the East Coast of New Jersey, and worked on the research side of the Bell Labs. And after about 6 years, I decided to get out and do something. That something is the reason why you guys have actually invited me to talk about it. So I did start the first company, and luck was with me, and saw a good exit. Then I started two others, and the luck didn't last that long, but I still exited those two companies. And then, I spent a considerable amount of time in India, working on the angel networks kind of a movement. And then, and I'll talk about the later part in the later part of my conversation. I'm going to start the talk with sharing my slides. Let's see, how do I do that? Give me a second. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is my first slide, most of which I talked. I have to tell you one thing about myself, that I use the presentation slides mostly to remind myself as a visual aid about what I'm going to talk about. So you really don't have to pay that much attention to the slides, but if you want to read along, that's fine with me. It certainly won't be the jazzy ones that you get from the McKinsey guys. There are no dancing queens there, so bear with. The summary of what I'm going to talk about is here. I'm going to talk a bit about what I did, but more focused on the kind of things that I learned along the way. I think all but the last two are about the startup world, and the last two items are more about what I learned doing in NGO or what the philanthropic activity. So let's dive into it. I am trying to stay on time. Okay. Passion is a rocket fuel. You should not be an entrepreneur if you don't have a passion. That is the most important ingredient for a success. And when people talk about a passion, I take a much wider view of what it is. Some people are passionate about being rich or the billionaires. Some people really like the status it gives them by being successful and powerful. And some others are a lot more motivated by, I was considered the dumbest student, and my parents didn't think much of me, and I'm going to show the world up what I'm capable of. And then there are some others who have a changing the world kind of things. It doesn't matter what is your passion, but the passion is the first thing. In fact, my motto all through my life has been that if I don't feel like getting out of the bed to go to work, whatever the work may be, for 30 days in a row, it's time for me to do something else. And that's what happened when I worked at TCS and many other times in my life. So you start out with the passion. The second most important thing is that you have to be willing to take a risk. I had hired in my first job very good engineers, quite a few of them. One in particular was actually a Stanford Ph.D. Admittee who halfway through the course left the place and joined me. A brilliant guy. Two of us and third person together have the crucial pattern that was a part of our first things. After I sold that company, he wanted to start another company. There was only one fault he had. He could not take the risk. Everything needed to be analyzed to the depth. Everything has to be clearly defined for him. Makes him a good engineer, but did not make him a good entrepreneur. Again, I would say that taking risk is sort of a common thing that you heard, but you want to take risks which are, choose the wisely what risk you take. An example of what Rajan mentioned, me jumping off the first floor, is not a risk you want to take. I was stupid enough to be doing that. Uh, I think the way I would define when you're choosing what kind of a thing to work on, it's like, you cannot say that I'm going to build a time machine. That is taking a stupid risk. On the other hand, you can actually take a risk of how people get their information, like the Google guys did, or stay in touch with friends, uh, like the Mark Zuckerberg did, or the Bezos did on B.Tech. Those are kind of risks that you can actually plot and say where you can go. So my first company was taking a risk about changing the way the internet was built. In those days, when I started my first company, the maximum throughput you can see out of a Cisco router was a 1 gigabit total. And I looked at that as a part of my research and concluded that that's something that has to be changed. And that's the risk I took. I start building a router which is 10 times faster. And so actually I ended up building a router which was 40 gigabit. And that was seen as excessive in those days, but nowadays you get a single router offering a terabit kind of a capacity. So it's again, uh, what I would say is that risk is a very personal thing. What kind of risk you are able to take depends on your capacity to imagine things and also the attitude to take the risk. I think in that particular case, I come from a Gujarati trading family in Bombay, and so taking risk is sort of into my genes. I mean, that's but again, taking a risk is another second most important thing that you need to do. The third part I would say is know thyself. It is nobody can be good at everything. Uh, you could be very good at being a salesperson. You could be very good at technologically quite savvy. Uh, what is more important than all of that is to actually know what are your weaknesses, and then you hire the people to compensate for those weaknesses, for your lack of skills or knowledge. It's kind of intuitive to actually hire the people whom you like and whom you appreciate. They turn out to be more like yourself. That is not how you actually hire. Hiring a good people is an essential skill. You have to recognize who they are. It's really uh, critical that the first 10 hires you do in your company are better than you in whatever the chosen field you are in terms of intelligence, in terms of ambition, everything. This is something that I actually find not quite well appreciated in the startup that I've seen in India. For whatever reasons, you have one or two founding members of the team, and then the quality of people you hire deteriorates very rapidly. Second thing that I would say is that, everybody says hire good people. It's actually more difficult to retain good people. There are, I would say at the outset that there are entrepreneurs and the CEOs who are very much a strong personality, and they do everything and they micromanage the whole thing, and some of them quite succeed. By and large, in order to retain good people, you have to actually give them the responsibility to either fail or succeed, and cannot micromanage them. So it is very hard to do that for an entrepreneur, because you sort of started out believing that you are the best among the best, and how can you not tell the other guys to do something? But that is the critical part required. And it may define it from a modest success to being a very great success as far as retaining a good people is concerned. The loyalty is the other part that I'll talk about. When I say loyalty, I mean actually you have to be loyal to the people that you hire, the people you have as customers, and even to extend the people who are your investors in your company. When it comes to the employees, I would say that loyalty is good, but you want to verify, you trust them, but verify. You have to actually put performance first and loyalty second. I mean, in my journey of 3 companies, I did one after other. Some of the basic mistakes I made has been that I had been really not very quick to fire the people who did not actually have the performance, but they were great friends or greatly loyal to me. I think you have to learn to recognize that performance is the first thing. Of course, as I said, I mean, there are organizations where you build it in the mold of a military. You are a general and everybody else is a army man who marches to your orders. And it works for some people. It doesn't work for me. That's not my style. The last thing I would say about this is, and again, this is not something that I see as much in Indian startups, is that equity is just the only one part of the reward. You offer the equity, you have to distribute them widely enough. In India, the equity also drops very rapidly because it's somehow not appreciated by the employees. But you also need to have a human concept. You have to connect with the people. You have to worry about their well-being. I had in my first company, my best performing super programmer was a person who was very much a family man. He would come at 8 o'clock and leave at 6 o'clock. Most of the people who have done startups in the US would be aghast at that because everybody works 70 hours, 80 hours. But this guy actually performed heads and shoulders above all the others who were sticking around. I appreciated the fact that he was into keeping the balance between the life and work. I myself never did that balance, but that's a separate story. Vision, vision is sort of this is a part of a large company lore that you need to have a vision and you have to have a strategy and tactics and all that. And I myself have never been a large company guy. In fact, I probably would be a real big misfit. I was a misfit in TCS where I worked right after college. I look at the vision. There is a Chinese proverb which actually resonates well with me. This is called crossing the river by filling the stone. What it means to me, I mean, different people have different interpretation of this proverb. What it means to me is that you set your mind to cross the river. You know where your goal is. That's where you want to go. But the actual path that how you choose to go there really does depend on the filling the stones. You really want to see what the next step is going to be and take that firmly and stably before you start thinking. If you so that's the way I look at the vision and goal and the KPIs and all those are buzzwords that I never quite understood and I still don't quite fully understand. So, what's the other thing I could tell to the people? I don't know how am I doing on time. Maybe could. One thing I would tell people is that you have to be a strong storyteller. Why is that very important? It's important because one, as an entrepreneur, you are willing into existence things that are in your mind. And in order to use that to inspire others who work for you or who invest their money or buy your product or services, you need to get really good at telling your story. It's not about making up things. It is about actually conveying your vision and yourself believing in it. And that authenticity comes through. And the way I practice that myself is that I actually, before I raise a single money or hire anybody else, I prepared a pitch and I talked to 20 other entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, thanks to the strong network of the TIE, which existed at that time in the Valley. And I actually learned a lot by their criticism as to how to tell my story. I'm probably not even as good as some of the other people in my batches are in terms of storytelling. I would say Raj Mashwala is a consummate personality who actually can do a lot better than I do. But again, I did well in telling my story. One thing I do emphasize is that because you are telling your story, even while you're going along, building your product, finding the first customers, uh, don't make up things that will come back to haunt you or will catch up with you. I think a classic example of that in the recent times is in Elizabeth Holmes, a founder and CEO of Theranos. And if you guys don't know what Theranos was or how it imploded, she was a great storyteller. She duped in a lot of well-known personality to be on a board, to be an investor. But fundamentally, she didn't have the product and she was making up things as it went along. So that is something that you don't want to get into. Let's see what I can say. You know, I believe that in order to actually succeed, you have to be arrogant. You have to believe in yourself. You will, when you start talking to people and start describing your ideas, particularly I did my companies by taking other people's money. I had no money of mine. I borrowed 5 computers for 5 first employees on my credit card. So I had no money of my own. So when you talk to people, I would say that 8 people out of 10, and I'm talking now of VCs and the individual investors, they'll look at you and say, I don't know what you're saying. I mean, this is not going to work. In fact, there were people, because my pitch at that point in time was I can do a lot better than Cisco in terms of the throughput, and nobody quite believed it. But I did have an idea of what I so a strong belief in yourself is important. At the same time, I keep saying that you need to be grounded in reality. You can't be delusional. Of late, I have gotten myself into the sailing world. So I use a sailing metaphor quite a lot. So what I say is that you need a strong sails which take you across the oceans, but at the same time you need a good ballast, which ballast means weight at the bottom of a boat that makes your boat stable and makes the journey. So I'd say have great fundamentals, but at the same time have a strong belief in it. And the very last thing I would say, which is actually equally important, is to when I say be arrogant, it doesn't mean that you believe everything you are telling everybody else. This particular idiom says, "Don't smoke your exhaust." It's all about you are spouting out a whole lot of things and creating what Steve Jobs used to call a reality perception around him. I think that's great, but you must know the reality. You cannot smoke your own exhaust because your action cannot be based on that. So I would say that be arrogant and be humble at the same time. It's a kind of an interesting way of ordering your life or your attitude. Last, this is all I have to say about actually doing a startup. Startup is like a startup is a journey where you will see lots of ups and downs. If you actually do a startup and you are at some point in time in your life, you say, shit, I got about 100 people hired and I have money that is running out by the end of this 2 months period and I need to go raise money. How am I going to pay their salaries? Those are the kind of things happen, or that you have shipped your first product to a customer and the customer comes back with a scathing report saying, okay, you told me all this works, it doesn't. So there are lots and lots of ups and downs you go through in startups. So I know that this is not the advice anybody wants to hear, particularly in the IT and nowadays in India. Startup or being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. If you expect that to be very smooth sailing, don't enter into it. It's going to be, you may be very lucky and you may never have headwinds. It's all there. And some people are lucky all their life. But if you take a statistical sample, most people go through ups and downs. And so you must have a personality and a mental fortitude to be able to withstand those ups and downs. And if you are married, make sure then you do the startup that your wife is actually with you on that because there will be lots of stress points. The other thing I keep telling, and a lot of people don't fully understand that, is that don't do a startup as a single founder. I was a single founder. I did not have a co-founder. It's great. I can retain all the equity myself and get rich all by myself, but it's very stressful. There are things that you don't want to go back home and tell your wife saying, oh shit, this happened. You need a co-founder to dump on each other and to share the load. Otherwise, the likelihood of your divorces increases exponentially. So I would say take a co-founder. Some people do very well. I think some of the people who have done very well in my batch as an entrepreneur were lucky enough to have a co-founder as his own wife. And that works well as long as you know how to handle the stress that comes with it. I'm not going to name that guy, but anyway, it did work very well for them. So I'm going to pause for a second and move on to the other parts of my life. As the title reads, it's all about entrepreneur making and the movement. So let's move on to the making part of it. You know, It's sort of interesting that late in my life, I actually realized that an ability to make things is actually quite important. If you look at some of the very successful people who come up with a product or the novel services, for instance, Mark Zuckerberg, before he became big, actually wrote the software that actually, and so is it true for the Bill Gates. He actually wrote the operating. Of course, he didn't write an operating system. He wrote a compiler. But the point is, same thing is true of Steve Jobs. I think they were actually, in my parlance, I would say, a tinkerer first and an entrepreneur next. That is not to say that that's the only way to be a successful entrepreneur. And classic example of somebody who just knows how to talk and has become a well-known entrepreneur and the world's richest person currently is Elon Musk. That disproves my theory. I don't think if he wanted to build anything, he could ever build anything, yeah, by himself. So I think in general, making is, in my way of thinking, or learning to make things is one of the important ingredients. And it's also fun to do that. Now, I came to this realization somewhat from a different path. I went from IIT Bombay, where I was, as Rajan didn't actually quite mention, but I played volleyball all the time, and I actually skipped half the courses. So, it's sort of IIT education was not challenging enough, and all I did was take the notes from somebody else the night before and go for the exams. And clearly I wasn't going to be a topper with that kind of an attitude, but I passed out. That thing changed when I went to Stanford. Stanford, the top rank of the Stanford undergraduate students are way better educated. I'm not saying they are way better in terms of ability, but they are way better educated than the IIT graduates are. And the classic difference comes out of the fact that they actually have learned two things that we don't. One, they learn how to be inventive, think out of the box, how to challenge the assumptions. And the other thing they learn is how to build things themselves. That used to be the culture in US, and it's to a large extent still true. That plus so the Stanford example I give that shocks some of the people when I talk in IITs is that we had a course on a compiler, computer science compiler. It is not sufficient to actually learn the theory of compilers and bits and pieces of how do you write the interpreters and how do you do this and that. You actually had to build a mini compiler for a new language in order to get an A. And it had to be working. Similarly, in VLSI course I took from the NSE, who became a president of Stanford later, and my advisor, quality advisor. And so his VLSI course was building a 12-bit microprocessor. And I actually had to build a 12-bit ALU. It's not about design. I had to design it. I had to send it out to the fabrication. The chip came back. I had to taste it. Well, 11 bits out of 12 bits worked. But the point is, until I tasted it, I didn't get an A. So that's a very different style of teaching, which keeps you way more engaged into what you're doing than what I learned in IIT. My next part of the journey was at being a Labs research, and I was fortunate enough to be part of that computer science department. And this is a very different league of people there. Let's give an example. My next door neighbor, office guy, is the guy who actually designed C++, Beyond Sastra. My head of the department of 7 people was Dennis Ritchie, who designed C language. The 2 doors down to me was Ken Thompson, who is actually credited to be an originator of Unix. Now, what is unique about this group of people is that they actually were absolutely marvelous in building things. Ken Thompson was somebody, he only had a bachelor's degree from MIT. Ken Thompson was somebody who would think of a new language or new way of, and I'm talking computer language, think of a new computer language, and for fun, you would just decide to write a full working compiler over the weekend. That's a kind of an capability I didn't have. I think I could hold my own in terms of coming up with new ideas and get respect from them. But when it came to actually demonstrating, prototyping my ideas, I lagged a lot behind. And that's partly because they actually learned how to do that very early in their life. So these are the kind of, so another fun example of Ken Thompson is one night and we all work very hard, by the way. So one night at 11 o'clock, he walks into my office and says, let's go flying. And he owned a small plane and we went flying. He had actually written one of the first of its kind, what has now become a Google map kind of a thing. He took the topography details from some government department and built his own Google map kind of a thing to guide his plane around. And we flew between the World Trade Towers, of course. Those were the days. But again, I'm saying that those were the kind of people with whom I realized how critical it is to learn how to make things. And making things.
You are immigrant, right? Just so you know, that's not the experience in the right.
Okay. So, I think I'm getting into the place where I need to stop and talk about it. So, what happened is that when I decided that I need to stop making money and do something else in life, some of us got together and said, what can we do for IIT Bombay? And we started things called Tinkerer's Lab. In fact, we debated quite a lot whether it should be a Tinkerer Lab or something more serious name and all. But we ended up calling it a Tinkerer's Lab because we wanted to have a playful element to it. This is a lab where many of you might know is where any student has access, can walk in with an idea in the head and build their own prototype, either singly or their own. And it remains open 24/7 or more, like up to midnight. And it has all the necessary equipment to build a proof of the concept kind of prototypes. And that sort of was an inspiration for what I did next, which is the MakerVon Foundation. After having seen that accepted enthusiastically by the students at IIT, we decided to propagate that to other places. And so in the last 3 years, actually last 4 years after MakerVon Foundation started, we now have a Tinkerer's Lab established at 30 colleges by the end of this year. Some top tier, some second tier colleges, some private, some state supported or center supported. So 6 IITs and BITS Pilhani and all those kind of places. And we are actually taking a leap forward pretty soon. I believe we will be actually extending some of our programs to about 1,000 second tier colleges in partnership with some government agency called AICTE. So that program is flourishing. Building that movement, I use some of the same concepts that I actually have talked about it. I think the 2 important things that I would mention is that, which is different than what you do in the startup world, is that when you do an NGO, you don't have a measurable performance. I know everybody talks about it. Tell me how the outcome is going to be. And I have not yet figured out as to whatever programs we do, does it really change the attitude of the students? I don't know. I mean, individually, I see very enthusiastic responses, anecdotally, but I don't know how to measure it. So I forget about the outcome part. I am a passionate about the engineering education, so that drives it. And over the years, we have taken gentle steps. We do the pilot programs and then slowly expand it. And so that's a sort of a filling the stones kind of an approach that I've extended there. The one last thing I think is important is that many of the philanthropic organizations that I am aware of fall in two categories. One, which is mostly a personal glory. You feel like you want to do something, you want to attach your name, you put it to a building or something. And the second is more outcome oriented. You want to see an outcome, and not necessarily they are distinct, but those are the two different dimensions along with things fall. I like the outcome oriented ones, and if that's the case, it's almost important to actually work with other such organizations, and we work with other partners who have the similar goals. I'll stop there. I think I may have exceeded the allotted time for me, so please ask any questions you may have. Otherwise, I'll keep talking.
Thanks a lot, Hemant. No, you haven't. So we are almost in time. So we have still 15 minutes, around 15 minutes remaining. So my co-host Rishi and I will be taking up the questions. I already see there are a couple of questions. And okay, so I see the first question is from Chetali, and she is asking how to raise fund at the initial stage of a startup. So maybe you can shed some light on it very quickly, maybe in 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah.
I think the method by which you raise funds within India versus in USA are somewhat different. But almost always you want to actually have your pitch ready. You have to learn something a bit about what the motivation of the person is when they are going to invest in you. And so you have to have a rudimentary knowledge of the P&L statements, the next 5 years of how you're going to make money and how you're going to give exit to the investors. It's not sufficient to say the market is $1 billion market and I'm going to be 100 million in so and so year and you will be rich. That's not a sufficient way to actually pitch yourself, which unfortunately a lot of people do. How do you raise them? You start out with the people that you have the confidence on putting whatever little amount of money they're going to put in. Then you go approach there are many, within India, there are many angel investors. They actually give a little bit of money, not a lot. In US, the amount of check that angel investors write is $1 million or 500,000 or things like that. In India, that's more on a 50 lakhs, so is probably top limit at the moment. So again, it's a pyramid scheme. You start out with lesser known people to the well-known people and then go approach the VCs. Indian VCs are very gun shy. So if your thing is out of the VCs are like a herd. They go in one direction. Everybody is going to start doing this or that. And so you must know that. The second thing is that whoever you pitch to, it's important to actually take money from the right group of people. I know you don't want to hear that, but there are some toxic people, so you don't want to take the money. I can name them in US, I can't name them in India. So that's my answer.
Great. Thank you. Rishi.
Yeah, so the next question is from Devendra Oza. He graduated same year as me in 97. How do you overcome fear of failure? This is the first thing that every startup company faces, especially while convincing people to invest in your company?
Well, first of all, why would you fail? There is no reason you will fail, right? I mean, I given so first money I got was from a group of people, 5 individual investors. One of them actually went on to become a governor of Virginia and became a senator now in the things. And I was pitching how to build a better router and what is packet networks and all that. And the guy actually didn't even know what a packet is. So years later, I asked him, why the hell did you actually invest in me? You don't understand a shit of what I was talking about. And he said, look, I mean, I looked into your eyes and I understood that you are one of those guys who is not going to accept failure. I had that glint that, God damn it, I'll die before I'll fail. So, but in more realistic terms, what is the harm? I don't understand what is the problem if you fail. Uh, if instead of going for a good corporate job, if you actually do a startup for a few years, and if you find that it's not working, you can always get a job. In fact, you will get a better job than before because you've gotten an experience of doing things that would actually be valuable. So what is the harm? I don't see why you worry about being a failure. Sorry, that's not the answer you wanted to hear.
Yeah, thank you for that. Next question I see is very interesting, in fact, from Ramakrishnan. If you were to tinker with something now, what would that be?
It does depend on actually what you. There is a trick to actually, or there is an attitude to actually thinking about how do you come up with new ideas, right? My style of coming up with new ideas has been to, in one words, I would look at it and say, look at the trends in a domain that you know well. And what I would say in the ice hockey terms, which is not familiar in India, but outside, is you go where the puck is going to be and not where it is currently. So the way I look at it is saying internet was starting to have the files exchange, and the files were getting more like a video files and getting bigger and bigger. So it's going to require a lot of bandwidth. And the current router is going to be woefully short in doing that. So how do I make my router faster? That is the question I started with. If you are big enough and if you know your domain well enough, you can come up with all kinds of ideas. Let me give you an example. This is not my domain, but I'm at heart a nerd. So think in terms of the AI. Right now, what is happening in AI is that there is a cyclicity into the how the computers evolve. First, it is a general purpose microprocessor. Then you have special purpose chips, which actually do one job well. Apply that to how the AI is. Right now, AI is dominated by the NVIDIA general purpose graphics chips. GPU, they are called graphic processing units. When you say, I want to apply this to a particular domain, what will be the next step? I think you will have to come up with some special purpose chipsets. How do you do that? Believe me, there are people who are looking at that. That's an idea. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but that's how I look at saying how you come up with new ideas. So. I've silenced everybody.
No, is just asking, yeah.
So the next question is from Ajit Mishra. How different is building a product and building a company? I think.
I think building a company is all about the people. It's the people you interact with within the company. How do you motivate them? How do you actually get them all to move into one direction? How do you inspire them to do their best? That's a very different skill set, and that's a very different things that you do. Whereas building a product is about understanding what your customers want, not now, but in future. But more importantly, understand what would they pay money for. I think it's not sufficient in certain areas to say that, okay, I have this product which is 15% or 20% better and 10% cheaper. But there is a cost of switching. There is a mental barrier to switching. In certain areas, that dominates. So you cannot go out with a product which is going to do that. Or in my case, I went out with a router, and it quickly became clear that the way I was running into the problem. So anyway, I'm saying that product building that meets the customer expectations in a way that actually loosens the purses is a very different thing to think about than building organization. So don't focus on building part. It is what the end part that matters. So.
Great. Thank you. Another question, interesting one from Vinayak. How and when did you decide to sell your startups? What was your thought process?
I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. So I mean, I was really happy being a researcher at the Bell Labs, except that around that time, the Bell Labs were disintegrating. We actually had a um, I still don't like, I don't want to name him, but I still don't like the person who became a head. And he took it from a pure research to more of an whatever the big bosses tell you to do kind of a thing. So I wanted to get out of the labs. My wife was taking a job in Washington, D.C. area as a professor. And I could not conceive myself of finding a good job. So I started a company in DC area. That's the short answer.
The next question is from Shailesh Nirgurkar, a year junior to me, 98 batch. How can I assess the soundedness of my idea? That is, that it addresses a certain pain point, just do the prototyping and give it to a few people, a combination of these?
Talk to people. Talk to people. Don't just build a prototype. Talk to people first. Understand their pain points. You do not want to, I mean, look, there is no, so here are the things about the building of a product. It's easiest to get an entry into a market where the need for the product is already established and you are improving your performance in one way or the other. In my case, the need for a router was already there. It wasn't a new device. I'm just saying that I'm going to build something 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper, and 10 times lower in volume, physical volume. Okay, that's an easier sell. There are areas in which you are coming up with a completely new category of a product. That requires a lot more investigation and understanding what the customers need. So in my case, I didn't need to talk to customers that much. I did it when I actually was building a product, but not before that. If you have a very new category defining product or a service, you must talk to customer first before you start investing a lot of your time.
Thank you. We have just 2 minutes remaining. So one last question. In fact, maybe you can take it a quick question. Is there an ideal age to launch a startup as asked by Jindal Shah?
Ideal what? Sorry.
Ideal age to start a startup.
Not really. I mean, I think if you are going to do a deep tech startup where technology knowledge is required, it is better to have actually done it after, not right after bachelor's. If you are going to, but there's also an expiration date. If you work in a consulting firm for 15, 20 years, your blood is frozen. you really cannot do a startup afterwards. And I know I may anger a lot of people in this crowd, but it's like working in a bank for 20 years and you're not going to do a startup. I can guarantee you that. So it's not age dependent as much as your experience dependent.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dr. Kanakia. It was a fantastic talk. Everyone loved it. Of course, there are a few more questions, but as we are in time, we would like to end it up here. My one question is that some of them may reach out to you, or they may ask about your contacts or email ID. What do you think is a good way to connect with MBF or with you for some kind of mentorship, or maybe they will invite you to join advisory boards or something. I'm not sure, but what would be the best way to connect with you? Should I give your email ID or some contact of MBF?
Well, I should have made the pitch about the Makeathon Foundations, which is already put up. If you look at the shared video, which is makeathonfoundation.org.
Okay, so
That
maybe I'll take it from you and share it with the rest. Yeah, I'll take it
yeah.
from you, the details, and share it with the rest, because a lot of them are actually asking about MBF as well. So maybe they can go to the website, look at it, or maybe they can reach out to MBF. So that
Also, you
should
can,
be interesting.
yeah, also you can
Vaibhav,
share
put
my
it in the chat. Put it in the chat, the link if you want.
Yeah, we
you
have a
can
group. So basically, we have an active group. I will just share there so that anybody
Yeah.
can reach out to them.
As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, we want to promote MBF,
you
and
can
anybody who
and you
wants
can
to.
also yeah, you can also share my email. I don't mind that. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So, any final words, Rajan? So, by the way, Rajan is classmate of Hemant, and that's why he was, here with us to add a lot of personal touch to all this, and he successfully did it actually. Otherwise, we might not have known about volleyball and other things. By the way, I'm also from H8. When I saw H8 in the presentation, I was very happy. So, any final words, Rajan?
No, I mean, it was incredible. I think he shared some of the very, the questions elicited a lot of the responses that we were looking
Uh-huh.
for. I mean, we can
Uh-huh.
go on for a long time. We have a
Of
lot
course, yeah.
more, but time is, up, and I think we thank
Yeah.
you guys, you two, having brought him in. We have a lot of our classmates who are willing to participate in this TEG sessions. So
Uh-huh.
we're going to line them up, as we discussed.
I put a
Overall,
fear of God
fantastic.
in that. Don't worry.
What is that, Hemant?
I'm saying I put a fear of God into my batchmates. They're not going to interfere.
No, probably, this could be a nice motivation point now. That could be
Yeah,
a case. Yeah. Yeah, because
right.
this is another way of giving back, of course, to ITB alumni. And that's the reason, for example, Rishi is quite occupied with his startup and it's pretty early morning, but every TG talk he's there. He's in time. He prepares everything quite well. And yeah, that's quite interesting. Anyways, it's there. We are in time. Thanks a lot, Dr. Kanakia, for the fantastic talk and your time. Of course, I'll share the details, and we will be in touch for further synergies. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me. Okay.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yeah.
bye.
Bye. Yeah. Bye bye.